Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game. Dear God, boy, do I have an exciting episode for you guys today. That is because as of yesterday, late in the afternoon, too late for me to cover at the 4 p.m. slot, Demul finally updated after years and years of being idle, and we now have much better Sega Hikaru emulation. When I've talked about this hardware in the past, I said it is absolutely Achilles' heel of Sega arcade emulation, and that the original hardware is so delicate, if you even look at it wrong, and don't whisper sweet nothings into its actual silicon, it will just break on you. I've tried to buy 3 different Planet Harriers boards in the past, and each one has either shown up broken or broken before the owners actually got it into the box. That is because it actually has an engineering failure on it where they didn't tin the pad, so when they put the actual chips on the board, it can end up just basically coming apart at the seams. But now with the new version of Demul, you're going to get much better emulation across the entirety of the Hikaru range of games. Now I don't want you to think it's going to be perfection, and these little hitches right here you're going to see is the shader compiling in the background and caching, but this is fundamentally so much better than we ever had before, and I would say a lot of these games are getting very close to what I would deem as completely playable. That isn't to say again that they're going to be perfect and original hardware would still be better, but you can't really find original Sega Hikaru hardware at this point in time. It is basically the white whale of Sega collecting, just down to the fact that it basically, again, just breaks if you don't basically treat it like a princess and give it a crown. Before we get much further involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But Planet Harriers is a game I've talked about more than once in the past on the channel, and I did say that there was one version of Demul from like the original Obama administration that would actually run this game perfectly fine, but it would have a lot of graphical glitches. Now we're in a situation in which a lot of the graphics across the entire range of Hikaru games have been completely cleaned up. You're going to have better water in Star Wars Pod Racer. Brave Firefighters are actually going to have torsos now, but we'll get a little bit more into those as we show you the actual game. But honestly, Planet Harriers is one of those games I've always wanted to own an original board for it, and I'm definitely going to still keep looking for one, but in the meantime, this game now no longer freezes, and you can actually play it from start to finish with the appropriate graphics, and that makes a world of difference. And that's why I'm always advocating for software emulation on the channel, because in this instance it really is preservation first and actually gameplay secondarily. That is just because if you know where there is a Planet Harriers board or arcade cabinet in the world, leave me a comment down below. Last time I talked about this game on the channel, exactly 2 cabinets were known to exist, and I don't really even know if those are out there either anymore, because this game really wasn't a huge success for Sega. I'd say really the only game that probably hit for them was going to be the NASCAR racing game or the Star Wars game, but Brave Firefighters, the Virtual On game, those just really didn't have much success in arcades like previous Sega entries did, so a lot of those cabinets were recycled when they broke, and trust me, they definitely did, because they weren't making arcade operators anywhere near as much money as some of Sega's other hits are. But we're going to move early into our first soundtrack sample so you can get a sense of how Planet Harrier sounds now. I would say that the emulation on the sound isn't perfect, but it's like 95% of the way there, so go ahead and listen for 45 seconds. We'll come back as I got more games to show. You can definitely hear a little bit of the hitching there in the audio, but again, compared to where it used to be in the past, it is remarkably improved. And now I did check in the background with some people that were testing this as well. You can play Planet Harriers from start to finish without any freezing or issues whatsoever. But moving on to Virtual On here, this is one where the controls are definitely a little bit weird to set up, and I was still struggling when I captured this footage. I come to find out that apparently some of the bindings in the arcade board in and of themselves actually bind to some of the inputs you would never expect them to. Now you will see this one definitely does hitch, but again, that is some of the shader compilation in the background. Once those cache out completely the first time you play the game in successive playthroughs, that should definitely limit itself. I'm not saying it's never going to hitch whatsoever. I'm just saying that that will definitely reduce down. And if you are curious spec-wise, I'm using an i9-12900K overclocked on a water cooler, 64 gigabytes of RAM, and an NVIDIA 3080 Ti. That was probably top of the line about 3 years ago. Now it is mid-top of the line, but it definitely will hold up to whatever Hikaru Emulation needs of it. But if you're trying to bring a potato to the party, expect potato performance and maybe a frame rate in the seconds per frame, not frames per second category. You don't need to have a beast, but just make sure you have a GPU and a CPU in there that were still around maybe like 5 or 10 years ago, and you should be totally fine. But this is a game that was recently dumped as well. People thought it was lost, so it is fun now to be able to experience this and play it. Once I actually get the controls completely wired up, now knowing that what should have been done is the complete opposite of what you would expect to do, it'll be more interesting to take a look at in the morning. And I would say, as far as Hikaru games are concerned, definitely not the prettiest one out here. I would say the Virtual on something like Model 2 or even on Dreamcast, maybe a prettier looking game, but it's fun to have this from a preservation standpoint, and I am stoked that it's working now in the most current version of Demul because it never used to work before. But now let's move over to Brave Firefighters, the only game I've ever actually played on a real arcade cabinet outside of the 2 racing games. I played this from start to finish years and years ago when I worked in skiing. I think maybe I saw it in Mammoth, California, or maybe it was Lake Tahoe on the Nevada side of things. Those trips all kind of get muddled in my head, but I put like 15 bucks into the machine, played it from start to finish, had a great time, and never really thought about it again until years later. Now this was a game in previous versions of Demul. You could beat it if you went the exact right route. If you failed one challenge, you would end up onto a branching path that would freeze the game, but basically all of the models would be missing a lot of their polygons, and all of the firefighters here would be completely missing their torsos. Now that is completely fixed up, and again, this is one that you're going to be able to sit down and play from start to finish. And that definitely is awesome, because even if I could find an arcade board for this game, the way that it actually uses its controls would be very difficult to set up in a home environment. And trust me, I spend all day long, that's not true, it's not all day every day, setting up the most ridiculous control schemes to run these games outside of an arcade cabinet. And while it can be done, having something like a mouse cursor, in this instance me using gun for IR, absolutely works a lot better than what I would generally try to do if I was sitting in my house. Don't worry about the cursor going off screen there. I just had to click off the window and back on just to make sure that it was actually focusing on the mouse, because it's one of those things every once in a while with a game that's using the mouse cursor you can actually lose focus. But we're moving into soundtrack sample 2 right now. Go ahead and listen to the music and sound effects from Brave Firefighters, and I'll be right back. I mean, that sounds accurate to me, but again, it's one of those things. The last time I played this game, I was probably 22 or 23. I am now exactly 40 years old, so I have about a 16 to 17 year memory lap and actually understanding what that game sounded like. And trust me, back then, I was probably like 12 Miller High Lifes and 6 shots deep before I even picked up the controls, so it probably sounded like the entire room was spinning and I was fighting a real fire, just didn't really realize it. But this game, again, straight up 10 out of 10 in my opinion in the fun factor for Sega, and it is another game that's going to see vast improvements in the most recent version of Demul. And if you are wondering where to get this, it's on the Demul Discord server in the pinned messages. I will leave a link to that server in the description below. Just do me the favor, remember when I send you somewhere and they ask where you came from and you say my channel, that means however you behave on those servers is representative of me. I try to be nice and friendly to absolutely everyone, so make sure if you do go over there, you kind of adhere to that and kind of just say please and thank you. I know that sounds a little bit hokey, and trust me, in my real life, I'm not that saccharine sweet, but it is one of those things when I send you guys somewhere, I just want you to be cool and have fun, because that's what helps keep this fun going. Now, as far as NASCAR Arcade, this one just seems to be straight up working 100% perfectly fine, which is to say, just like a regular arcade cabinet I have played it, the timing on these things is very tight unless you go into the test menu and change it around, because I'm running a decent race here, and I can barely make it through the second lap without running out of time. but that is a Sega arcade racing game for you. They always seem to be delivered slightly shorter on time than I would like them to in normal mode. So if you do want to play around with this one, I highly recommend going into the test menu, just easing up on the difficulty a little bit, because even though I go a little bit off the course once or twice, I am drifting here and I feel like I should have been able to at least complete this race. But as far as the performance here, as far as the graphics are concerned, you have the skybox, you have the ground, all of the different models of the vehicle, everything is running correctly with the right speed, and because I have played this one before, I was able to actually borrow some of the shader caching and then kind of make this run a little bit smoother. But it's also going to be our third soundtrack sample. First we're going to start with NASCAR, then we're going to move into Star Wars. Listen, and I'll be right back.
What's the matter with car number 3? He has a door engine.
I mean, if you can't tell there, the engine noises versus the actual soundtrack underneath definitely could use a little bit of audio balancing, but that's not really that weird for Sega arcade games, as I've said in previous videos, not on Hikaru games, but on other Sega arcade racers. Sega always like to prioritize the sound effects of the engine over top the actual sound of something like the soundtrack, and this is because a lot of times these cabinets had more than 2 speakers in them. Sometimes they were in the headset, so the balance can be a little bit difficult when you try to merge it down, but definitely something that I think could be slightly improved. But what can't be improved here is the fact that the water is now where it needs to be. Last time I took a look at this, the water was about half a foot up to the ship, and basically all the polygons would just break apart and look corrupted. Kind of looked like you ate the wrong mushrooms from Mario's Mushroom Kingdom. But honestly, this is amazing. It feels like an early Christmas gift to Sega fans, and considering we talked about Sonic Robo Blast 32X last night being the other Christmas gift to Sega fans, we're getting all the presents this year. But we are done. The link is in the description below, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Bye-bye.